Take her off the shift. She's pale, she's slow, and she's a liability to this hospital. The chief of staff pointed at me in front of everyone. I gripped the edge of the medical cart, my vision blurring, but I couldn't speak. The homeless patient in bed 7, Alexander, watched me with sharp, judgmental eyes. He didn't know he was the reason I could barely stand. He saw weakness. He had no idea what I'd sacrificed to keep him alive. Tell me, which city are you watching from? Your support is the medicine that keeps this channel alive. Subscribe to Dramora Stories now, because the greatest sacrifices are often made in total silence. Now, let's continue. The chief didn't wait for my response. He turned to Alexander, the man I thought was a homeless patient, and said something that made my blood run cold. Sir, she's been flagged 3 times this month for performance issues. I recommend immediate termination. Alexander looked at me with those calculating eyes. He nodded once. Do it. I felt the room tilt. My supervisor stepped forward with a termination letter already in her hand, as if they'd been planning this moment. I tried to speak, tried to explain, but my throat closed. My legs buckled. Not here, I thought desperately. Not in front of him. Not after everything I'd done. But my body didn't care about dignity anymore. I collapsed right there in the middle of the nurse's station. Medical charts scattering around me like fallen leaves. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Alexander's face, his expression shifting from cold judgment to something I couldn't read. Was that concern? Or was I imagining things as consciousness slipped away from me? I woke up in the staff break room with an oxygen mask over my face. My supervisor stood over me with her arms crossed, her expression hard as granite. You have 10 minutes to clear out your locker, Lily, she said flatly. Then she turned and left without another word. I sat up slowly, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. My arm throbbed where the fresh needle mark was hidden carefully under my sleeve. I donated again this morning before my shift started. 450 milliliters. The blood bank technician had told me it was the last time they could accept from me for at least 3 months. My iron levels were dangerously low. But I couldn't stop donating. Not when his life depended on it. Not when I was the only person in Chicago with the right blood type who could keep him alive. I pulled off the oxygen mask and stood, gripping the wall for balance as the room spun around me. Through the break room window, I could see Alexander talking to the chief of staff in the hallway outside. He was no longer wearing the hospital gown. He wore an expensive tailored suit now, perfectly fitted. His disguise was completely over. He glanced toward the break room where I stood. Our eyes met through the glass for one long, suspended moment. For a split second, something flickered across his face, something that looked almost like recognition or guilt. Then he looked away and kept walking down the corridor as if I didn't exist. I stumbled to my locker, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the combination lock. How did I get here? How did I become the woman willing to destroy herself for a man who wanted to destroy her career? When did sacrifice turn into self-destruction? It started 3 months ago, back in September. I was working the night shift when a John Doe was rushed into the emergency room at Chicago General. Car accident on Lakeshore Drive. Massive internal bleeding. He needed 8 units of blood immediately, but his type was rare. AB negative. Only 0.6% of the population has it. I have AB negative too. It's on my hospital badge, right next to my name. Lily Harrison, RN, AB negative, Universal plasma donor. I donated on the spot that night. 2 units while standing in the hallway. Then I went back to work my 12-hour shift. The next day, they called me at home. The patient had crashed during surgery. They needed more blood desperately. I went back in on my day off and donated again. And then again the following week. And again. And again. Every time they called, I went. I never saw his face clearly. He was always unconscious, always in the intensive care unit behind restricted doors. But I heard the doctors talking in the hallways. He's a VIP. They whispered to each other. Someone extremely powerful. The hospital administrator personally oversaw every aspect of his care. I didn't care who he was back then. I just knew he needed to live. Something inside me, something I couldn't explain or understand, made me keep going back to that blood bank. Some instinct deeper than logic told me this man mattered, that his life was important. I closed my locker for the last time, my few personal belongings shoved into my backpack. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and stared at the screen, my heart stopping. It was a text from the hospital blood bank. Emergency request. Patient AM in critical condition. Need immediate donation. Your blood type urgently required. I'm Alexander Montgomery. The man who just destroyed my career. My hands froze on my phone. I stared at the message, my entire body going cold and then hot. They were calling me again. Even now, even after he'd just fired me from the only job I had left, his body needed my blood to survive. I could ignore this message. I could walk away right now. Let him find out the hard way what happens when you destroy the only person keeping you alive. Let him face the consequences of his own cruelty. But even as I thought it, I knew I couldn't do it. Even hating him, even knowing he'd just ended my career without a second thought, I couldn't let him die. Whatever this connection was, whatever force kept pulling me back to save him, it was stronger than my anger. I texted back with trembling fingers. On my way to the blood bank now. I didn't see Alexander watching me from the hallway security camera feed in the hospital administrator's office. I didn't see the way his expression changed when he saw me walking toward the basement blood bank instead of the parking lot exit. I didn't see him lean forward in his chair and pull up my employee file on the computer. But I would find out later that was the exact moment everything started to change. The moment he began asking questions that would unravel everything. The moment he started to see me as something other than the weak link he needed to eliminate. The blood bank was empty when I arrived. Just the tired-looking technician who'd been taking my donations for 3 months straight. Lily, she said when she saw me, her voice worried. You really shouldn't be here again so soon. Your last test results were concerning. Your hemoglobin is dangerously low. I know, I said quietly, rolling up my sleeve. But he needs it. Please. She looked at me for a long moment, something sad in her eyes. Then she sighed and prepared the needle. You're going to end up in a hospital bed yourself if you keep this up, she warned me. You know that, right? I know, I repeated. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. The needle went in, and I watched my blood flow through the tube into the collection bag. A B negative, rare, precious. The only thing keeping Alexander Montgomery alive while he systematically tried to destroy the hospital wing where I worked. I'd learned the truth about him 2 weeks ago, discovered who the homeless patient in bed 7 really was. Alexander Montgomery, Billionaire CEO. going undercover to evaluate hospital staff before making decisions about funding cuts. He was testing us, watching for any sign of weakness or incompetence that would justify shutting down our entire emergency wing. And I'd become his primary target without even realizing it. Every small mistake I made because of exhaustion, he reported. Every time I moved slowly because my body was giving out, he documented it. He was building a case to fire me, never knowing that the reason I was failing was because I was literally keeping him alive. The irony was so brutal it made me want to laugh or cry. I wasn't sure which anymore. The donation took 45 minutes. When it was done, I sat in the recovery chair with juice and crackers I couldn't stomach, staring at the wall. The technician labeled my blood with the patient code I'd memorized. M priority. Urgent. She carried it away toward the elevators that led to the intensive care unit. My blood flowing in his veins. My strength keeping his heart beating. My life sustaining his while he destroyed mine. I stood up too quickly and the room spun violently. I grabbed the chair back, waiting for the dizziness to pass. Then I walked out of the blood bank, through the basement corridors and up the stairs toward the main exit. I was done with Chicago General Hospital. Done with nursing, maybe. Done with sacrificing myself for people who would never see me as anything more than expendable. But as I pushed through the heavy doors into the cold December air, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart breaking. Something deeper. Something fundamental giving way after holding on too long. I made it 3 blocks before I collapsed on the sidewalk. One moment I was walking, the next I was on my hands and knees, the world tilting sideways. Someone screamed. People rushed over. I heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was thinking how stupid it was to collapse 3 blocks from a hospital. How ironic that I'd spent months keeping someone else alive and couldn't even keep myself standing. When I woke up, I was back inside Chicago General, but this time as a patient. I was in a bed in the emergency room, and 4 in my arm, monitors beeping steadily around me. The fluorescent lights hurt my eyes. A doctor I didn't recognize stood at the foot of my bed, reading my chart with a deep frown. "Miss Harrison," he said when he saw I was awake, "you're severely anemic. Your iron levels are critical. Your body is shutting down. When was the last time you ate properly?" "I don't remember," I said honestly. My voice came out as a whisper. He looked at me with something between pity and frustration. "You're a nurse," he said. "You know better than this." "What's been going on? This level of anemia doesn't happen overnight." I couldn't tell him the truth. Couldn't explain that I'd been donating blood twice a week for 3 months to save a man who hated me. So I said nothing, just turned my face away toward the wall. The doctor sighed. "We're admitting you overnight for observation and iron infusions," he said. "You're not going anywhere until we stabilize you." He left, shaking his head. I lay there in the emergency room bed, staring at the ceiling tiles I'd stared at 1,000 times while working. But this time I was on the other side. This time I was the one who'd pushed too far and broken. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, people I'd worked beside for 2 years. Some looked surprised to see me as a patient. Others looked knowing, as if they'd seen this coming. No one asked what happened. In a hospital, everyone's too busy fighting their own battles to question yours. It was almost midnight when I heard voices outside my curtain. Low, urgent, arguing. I recognized one of them immediately. Alexander Montgomery, What do you mean she's here as a patient? His voice was sharp, demanding. I just saw her this morning. What happened? The other voice belonged to Dr. Chen, the ER attending. Severe anemia, malnutrition, exhaustion, Dr. Chen replied. She collapsed 3 blocks from here. Honestly, Mr. Montgomery, I'm surprised she stayed conscious as long as she did. Her body has been shutting down for weeks. There was a long silence. Then Alexander spoke again, his voice different now. Quieter. Almost shaken. How bad is it? Bad enough that she needs several days of treatment, Dr. Chen said, maybe longer. She's been systematically destroying her health. The question is why? People don't reach this state by accident. I heard footsteps. The curtain around my bed moved, and Alexander stepped through. He'd changed from the suit into dark jeans and a black sweater, looking less like a CEO and more like an actual human being. He stopped when he saw me, his expression unreadable. Lily, he said. Just my name, nothing else. I stared at him, too exhausted to be angry anymore. What are you doing here? I asked. Shouldn't you be celebrating? You got what you wanted. I'm gone. He moved closer to my bed, his hands shoved in his pockets. I came to check on you, he said. I saw the security footage. You collapsed on the street. So? I closed my eyes, too tired for this conversation. You won. Congratulations. Now please leave. But he didn't leave. Instead, he pulled up the visitor's chair and sat down heavily. Why did you go to the blood bank today? He asked quietly. After I fired you. After everything. Why? I opened my eyes and looked at him. Because you needed it, I said simply. Because someone had to keep you alive. His face changed. Something cracked in his expression, confusion mixing with something that might have been realization. What are you talking about? You really don't know, I said, almost laughing. Of course you don't know. Why would they tell you? Why would anyone tell the great Alexander Montgomery that the nurse he was trying to fire was the only reason he survived the last 3 months? He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loud against the floor. What are you saying? I'm saying that every single unit of blood you received after your car accident came from me. I said, my voice flat. AB negative, rare type. Only donor available who matched. I donated twice a week for 3 months straight to keep you alive. That's why I was slow. That's why I was pale. That's why I kept making mistakes, because I was literally dying to save you. The color drained from his face. He took a step back, hitting the curtain behind him. No, he said. That's not possible. The blood bank, they said it was from the general supply. They lied to protect your privacy, I said. VIP patient, remember? They couldn't tell you that your life depended on one person. One exhausted nurse who kept showing up every time you needed her, even when her own body was shutting down. Even when you were reporting her every mistake to get her fired. Alexander stared at me, his jaw working like he wanted to speak but couldn't find words. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Get out, I said, turning my face away. You got what you came for. Now leave me alone. But he didn't move. He stood there frozen, staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Horror, guilt, something deeper than either. Finally he spoke, his voice barely audible. You saved my life. Yes, I said to the wall. And you destroyed mine. I guess we're even now. I heard him leave, his footsteps heavy and slow. The curtain swished closed. I was alone again in the emergency room, with only the steady beep of monitors and the distant sound of hospital chaos beyond my little curtained world. I didn't cry. I was too empty for tears. I just lay there, feeling my body slowly rebuild itself with the iron infusion dripping into my veins, wondering if it was possible to regret saving someone's life. Wondering if sacrifice stopped being noble when the person you sacrificed for never even knew your name. Sleep came eventually, heavy and dreamless. When I woke, pale winter sunlight was filtering through the high windows. A new shift of nurses moved through the air. Someone had brought me breakfast on a tray, though I couldn't imagine eating. But something was different. There was a folder on my bedside table that hadn't been there before. I reached for it with my free hand, the one without the 4. Inside were papers. Legal documents, my termination letter, marked void and shredded. A new employment contract with my position reinstated and a significant raise. A letter on hospital administrator letterhead apologizing for the error in my termination. And underneath all of that, a handwritten note on expensive paper. Just 3 words in bold, angular handwriting. I'm so sorry. I stared at the note for a long time, trying to understand what it meant. An apology from Alexander Montgomery? The man didn't seem capable of admitting fault, let alone apologizing. But the evidence was in my hands. He'd undone his damage, at least professionally, given me back my job and then some. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow, because none of this addressed the real question burning in my chest. Why did I save him? Why did I keep going back to that blood bank, even when my body begged me to stop? What kind of insane instinct made me sacrifice everything for a man who didn't even know I existed beyond being a problem to eliminate? The curtain moved and Dr. Chen stepped in, smiling. Good news, Lily, he said. Your levels are coming up nicely. We'll keep you 1 more night for observation, but you should be able to go home tomorrow. Just promise me you'll actually rest and eat properly. I will, I said automatically. Dr. Chun, can I ask you something? Of course. The VIP patient from September, the car accident victim. Is he still here, Mr. Montgomery? Dr. Chen shook his head. He was discharged 2 weeks ago. Fully recovered. Why do you ask? Just curious, I said. I'd been his nurse during his undercover evaluation period after all. Dr. Chen's expression shifted, becoming more serious. Lily, did you know you were his primary blood donor? The blood bank just informed me this morning. They said Mr. Montgomery specifically requested the records. My stomach dropped. He was looking into it, verifying my claims, probably trying to understand how the nurse he'd fired had saved his life without him knowing. I knew, I said quietly. I was there every time they called. Dr. Chen sat down in the visitor's chair, his professional demeanor softening. That's incredibly selfless, he said, and incredibly dangerous. You could have died, Lily. Your body was shutting down. Why didn't you tell anyone what was happening? Because nobody asked, I said simply. And because it needed to be done, someone had to keep him alive, even at the cost of your own life. I didn't answer, because the truth was yes. For reasons I still couldn't explain or justify, yes. I would have kept donating until my body gave out completely. until there was nothing left of me to give. Dr. Chen studied my face for a long moment. Then he stood, patting my shoulder gently. "Rest," he said. "Let your body heal. And Lily, next time, save yourself too. Martyrdom doesn't suit you." He left, and I was alone with my thoughts again. With the note in my hand and questions I couldn't answer swirling through my exhausted mind. The rest of the day passed slowly. More iron infusions. More tests. More nurses checking vitals and asking if I needed anything. I said no to everything except water. My body felt like a stranger's, hollow and fragile. Evening came. The E quieted as the day shift left and night shift took over. I recognized some of the voices beyond my curtain. People I'd worked with. They knew I was here. The gossip had already spread through the hospital. Lily Harrison, the nurse who nearly died saving a patient who was trying to get her fired. I wondered what they thought of me. Hero or fool? Martyr or idiot? Maybe both. It was almost 9 when I heard footsteps approach my curtain. Alexander stepped through, and I saw immediately that something had changed. He looked wrecked. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his expensive clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept. He stood at the foot of my bed just staring at me. "I spent all day reading records," he finally said, his voice rough. "Blood bank logs, donation schedules, medical reports. Every single time they called you, you came. Even on your days off, even in the middle of the night, you never said no." "That's what donors do," I said neutrally. "They donate." He shook his head sharply. "No, that's not what happened. You weren't just a donor. You were the only donor. My blood type is so rare that you were the only match available in Chicago. Without you, I would have died in that ICU. Without you showing up twice a week for 3 months straight, I wouldn't be standing here." I didn't respond. What was there to say? "Do you understand what that means?" His voice rose slightly, emotion cracking through. "You saved my life. Multiple times. While I was building a case to destroy your career. While I was documenting every mistake you made because of exhaustion. While I was judging you as weak and incompetent. You were bleeding yourself dry to keep me alive." "Yes," I said simply. "I was. Why?" The word exploded from him. "Why would you do that?" I met his eyes directly. "Because you needed to live," I said. "Because something in me knew that your life mattered, even if you never knew mine did. Because walking away and letting you die wasn't something I was capable of doing. Not then, not now. Even knowing everything." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then he moved suddenly, closing the distance to my bedside. He dropped into the chair and put his face in his hands. "I don't understand," he said, his voice muffled. "I don't understand people like you. People who give without expecting anything back. People who sacrifice without keeping score. I've spent my entire life in business where everything is a transaction, where kindness is weakness and generosity is stupidity. Maybe that's why you needed saving," I said quietly. "Not just your body. Maybe your perspective needed it too." He looked up at me, his eyes intense. "Teach me," he said. "Teach me how to see the world the way you do. Where saving someone matters more than whether they deserve it." "I don't think that's something you can teach," I said. "Then let me try to understand," he insisted. "Let me make this right. Not just with job reinstatement and paperwork. Let me actually fix what I broke." You can't fix this, I said, gesturing to the 4 in my arm, to my exhausted body. The damage is done. My body will recover eventually, but trust? That's gone. You showed me exactly who you are when you had power over me. His jaw tightened. Then let me show you who I can become, he said. Give me a chance to be someone worthy of what you did for me. I looked at him for a long time. This powerful man sitting beside my hospital bed, begging for redemption he probably didn't deserve. Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to protect myself from more pain. But another part, the same instinct that made me keep donating blood even when my body screamed to stop, that part whispered yes. Give him a chance. See if people can change. One chance, I said finally. But not here. Not now. I need time to heal. Time to remember who I am when I'm not destroying myself for someone else. He nodded immediately. However long you need, he said. I'll wait. And Lily? When you're ready, I'll prove to you that your sacrifice wasn't wasted on someone who couldn't change. He stood to leave, then paused at the curtain. One more thing, he said. I'm having the hospital wing named after you. The Harrison Emergency Wing. So everyone who walks through those doors knows that true courage looks like a nurse who saved lives even when it cost her everything. I don't want recognition. I just want to heal. Too late, he said with a small, sad smile. It's already in the works. You don't get to be invisible anymore, Lily. Not after this. He left before I could argue further. I lay back against the pillows, exhausted by the conversation. But something had shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of possibility. Maybe the space where healing could start. The night passed quietly. Morning came with Dr. Chen's approval for discharge. I changed back into my street clothes, accepted prescriptions for iron supplements, and instructions for rest. A nurse wheeled me to the front entrance in a wheelchair, hospital policy. Alexander was waiting by the doors in his car. I saw him through the glass, leaning against a sleek black vehicle, his expression serious. When he saw me, he straightened and opened the passenger door. I can take a cab, I said, as the nurse wheeled me closer. I know you can, he replied. But let me do this. Let me drive you home safely. It's the least I can do. I was too tired to argue. I got into the car and gave him my address. We drove through Chicago in silence, the winter afternoon gray and cold around us. He pulled up in front of my small apartment building in a neighborhood that was definitely not where billionaire CEOs usually visited. He turned off the engine and looked at the building, then at me. This is where you live? He asked, not judgmentally, just observing. Yes, I said. It's affordable and close to 3 different hospitals where I work. Used to work. I corrected myself. You worked 3 jobs? Something shifted in his expression. While donating blood twice a week. Someone had to pay the bills, I said. Nursing doesn't pay as much as people think, especially when you're supporting yourself in Chicago. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want to help. Financially. Let me cover your rent, your expenses, while you recover. No, I said immediately. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, he said. It's accountability. I'm responsible for putting you in this position. Let me take responsibility for helping you get out of it. I looked at him, this man who'd gone from my enemy to my supplicant in 24 hours. You really want to help? I asked. Yes, anything. Then leave me alone for a while, I said. Let me figure out who I am when I'm not sacrificing myself. When I'm ready to see you again, I'll let you know. His face fell, but he nodded. However long you need, he repeated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. My personal cell phone, he said, handing it to me. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. I took the card and got out of the car. He waited until I was inside the building before driving away. I watched through the lobby window as his expensive car disappeared into Chicago traffic. Then I climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, unlocked my door, and stepped into the quiet space that was mine alone. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and just stood there in the silence. For the first time in 3 months, I had no shifts to work, no blood bank appointments, no emergency calls in the middle of the night. Just time, just space, just me. I walked to my bedroom and lay down on my own bed in my own apartment with nothing demanded of me. And finally I let myself cry. Not from sadness or anger, but from sheer exhausted relief. I'd survived. Against all odds, I'd survived. Sleep came quickly, deep and healing. I slept for 16 hours straight, my body finally given permission to rest. When I woke, it was morning again and my phone was buzzing with messages. Several were from the hospital HR department, confirming my reinstatement and new salary. One was from my bank, showing a deposit that made me blink and reread the number 3 times. A note attached said, "Back pay for time missed due to medical leave." From Alexander Montgomery's office. It was enough to cover 3 months of expenses. Enough that I didn't have to rush back to work. Enough that I could actually heal. I should have been angry at his presumption, but I was too tired for pride. I needed the help, whether I wanted to admit it or not. Days passed. I focused on simple things. Eating regular meals, taking iron supplements, walking around my neighborhood in the pale winter sunshine, reading books I'd never had time for, sleeping without alarms, letting my body remember what it felt like to be rested. I didn't call Alexander. I wasn't ready. But I kept his card on my nightstand, looking at it sometimes and wondering what he was doing, if he was thinking about me, if he understood yet why I'd saved him. 2 weeks after my discharge, I was strong enough to go for longer walks. I found myself heading toward Chicago General without planning to. Just walking past, observing from outside. The construction had already started. Large signs announced the Harrison Emergency Wing renovation. My name 40 feet tall, visible from blocks away. I stood on the sidewalk staring up at it, not sure how to feel. Proud? Embarrassed? Vindicated? All of it and none of it at once. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Alexander Montgomery. Personal cell. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Lily. His voice was warm, relieved. Are you okay? I've been hoping you'd call. I'm standing outside the hospital, I said, looking at the sign with my name on it. Do you hate it? He asked. Be honest. I don't know what I feel about it, I admitted. It's overwhelming. Can I come see you? He asked. Not to push, just to talk. I've been working on something I want to show you. What kind of something? A surprise. A good one, I promise. Will you meet me? There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from the hospital. The one with the blue awning. I know it, I said. I used to get coffee there before night shifts. Can you meet me there in 20 minutes? I should say no. Should protect myself. Should maintain distance. Okay, I said instead. 20 minutes. I hung up and walked slowly toward the coffee shop, my heart beating faster than the easy pace warranted. This felt like stepping off a cliff, but maybe that's what healing required. Maybe safety wasn't always the answer. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees in front of him. He stood when he saw me, his expression uncertain. "Lily," he said, "you look better. Rested." "I am," I said, sitting across from him. The coffee was my usual order. He'd somehow remembered from my employee file or asked someone. The gesture made something in my chest tighten. "Thank you for coming," he said, sitting back down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. "But I need to understand what happens next. For both of us." He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "This is what happens next," he said. "If you want it." I opened the folder. Inside were plans, architectural drawings, financial projections, a proposal for a new hospital initiative, free medical care for healthcare workers, anonymous blood donation support, mental health services for nurses and doctors, all funded by Montgomery Enterprises. "You're creating a program?" I asked, scanning the documents. "I'm creating a foundation," he corrected. "The Harrison Foundation for Healthcare Workers. Fully funded, independently operated. It will provide support for people like you who destroy themselves taking care of others, so that what happened to you can never happen to anyone else." I looked up at him, stunned. "This is millions of dollars." "Yes," he said simply. "It's the least I can do." "You gave me life, Lily. Let me give something back to the people who do what you do. Let me make sure your sacrifice means something bigger than just saving one man." Tears burned in my eyes. This was more than an apology. This was transformation. This was someone actually learning from their mistakes and trying to fix the system that allowed them. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly. "Why go this far?" "Because you were right," he said, leaning forward. "That day in your hospital room, you said maybe I needed saving too. Not just my body, but my perspective. You were right. I've spent 40 years seeing the world as transactions and competitions. You showed me there's another way, a better way, a better way." "One person can't change you," I said. "That's not how it works." "Maybe not," he agreed. "But one person can start the change. You started it, Lily. Now I need to finish it. Not just by saying thank you, but by becoming someone who deserves what you did for me." I looked down at the foundation plans again, the scope of what he was proposing. It would help thousands of healthcare workers. It would change lives. All because I donated blood to a man who hated me. "I'll help you build it," I said quietly. "I know what healthcare workers need. I know the gaps in the system. If you're serious about this, let me help make it actually work." His face transformed, hope lighting his features. "You'll work with me?" "As a consultant," I said firmly, "not an employee. Equal partners in this foundation. My expertise, your resources." "Agreed," he said immediately. "Whatever you want." "Whatever terms you need." We shook hands across the coffee shop table, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like myself again. Not a victim, not a martyr. Just Lily Harrison, nurse and now foundation builder. taking back control of my own story. Over the following months, we worked together building the Harrison Foundation. Long meetings in conference rooms, planning sessions over coffee, site visits to hospitals across Chicago. Slowly, carefully, Alexander and I moved from strangers to colleagues to something approaching friends. He was different now, more thoughtful, more willing to listen. He asked questions instead of making demands. He valued my input, respected my boundaries. The man who'd fired me for weakness had learned to see strength in vulnerability. And I was different too. Stronger not from suffering, but from surviving. I had learned my limits and how to protect them. I'd learned that sacrifice without self-care isn't noble, it's self-destruction. I'd learned to say no. 6 months after my collapse, the Harrison Foundation officially launched. The opening ceremony was held at Chicago General, with hospital staff, city officials, and press in attendance. I gave a speech about healthcare workers burning out in silence, about the need for systemic support. Alexander gave a speech about learning from mistakes, about how one nurse's courage had taught him to see beyond profit margins to actual human cost. He didn't mention that I was that nurse protecting my privacy, but people connected the dots anyway. After the ceremony, we stood together watching hospital staff line up to learn about foundation services. Mental health counseling, financial assistance, blood donation support. Everything I'd needed 6 months ago, now available to thousands. "You did this," Alexander said quietly. "This exists because of you." "We did this," I corrected. "Together." He looked at me. Something soft in his expression. "Lily, can I take you to dinner tonight? Not business, just us. I'd like to know you outside of conference rooms and foundation work. If you're willing." I considered him. This complicated man who'd hurt me terribly and then worked tirelessly to become better. Who'd taken my sacrifice and multiplied it into something that would help thousands. Who looked at me now like I was the most important person in his world. "Yes," I said, "I'd like that." That night, over dinner at a small Italian restaurant, we talked like normal people. About books and movies and childhood memories. About dreams beyond work. About who we were when nobody was watching. And somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, I realized I'd forgiven him. Not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. Because he'd done the work to change. Because the man across the table wasn't the man who'd fired me anymore. He drove me home after dinner, walking me to my building entrance. At my door, he hesitated. "Lily," he said, "I need you to know something. What you did for me saving my life, that's not why I'm here. I'm not trying to repay a debt. I'm here because somewhere in these 6 months, I fell completely in love with you, your strength, your compassion, your refusal to give up on people even when they don't deserve it." I looked up at him, my heart suddenly racing. "Alexander," I started. "You don't have to say anything back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know, no expectations, no pressure. Just the truth." I reached up and touched his face gently. "I think I started falling for you the day you came back to the hospital," I said. "When you looked wrecked and guilty and human. When you asked me to teach you to see the world differently. That's when I knew you were worth saving." He pulled me close, carefully like I might break. When he kissed me, it was gentle and reverent. Like I was something precious he'd almost lost and wouldn't risk again. We stood there in my building entrance, holding each other, Two people who'd found each other in the absolute worst way and somehow made it mean something beautiful. A year later, I stood in that same hospital corridor where I'd collapsed at Alexander's feet. But this time, I wore a white dress and held a bouquet of white roses. The staff had cleared the area, transformed it with flowers and lights. Alexander waited at the makeshift altar, his eyes locked on mine as I walked toward him. We'd chosen this spot deliberately. The place where everything fell apart. The place where we'd both been broken and forced to rebuild. Dr. Chen officiated, because he'd been there through all of it. He spoke about healing and second chances and love that survives impossible circumstances. When it was time for vows, Alexander took my hands. "Lily Harrison," he said, his voice steady. "You saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. You taught me that strength looks like vulnerability and courage looks like sacrifice. You showed me how to be human again. I vow to spend the rest of my life being worthy of what you gave me. Not just your blood, but your belief that people can change." I squeezed his hands, tears in my eyes. "Alexander Montgomery," I said, "you broke me and then helped me rebuild stronger. You learned to see beyond your own pain to someone else's. You turned one nurse's sacrifice into a foundation that helps thousands. I vow to spend the rest of my life reminding you that you were not the man who fired me. You're the man who chose to become better. And that man is worth loving." We kissed as husband and wife in the corridor where we'd both nearly died, where we'd both been saved. Hospital staff cheered. Camera flashes went off. But I only saw him. This complicated, redeemed man who'd learned to love someone who'd given him everything. The reception was held in the Harrison Foundation building, the space we'd built together. On one wall was the photo from the hospital wing opening. On another, the architectural plans for future locations. Our work, our legacy, our shared purpose. Late in the evening, Alexander and I slipped away to the foundation rooftop, looking out over Chicago's lights. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Everything that happened. The pain, the near death, all of it." I thought about it honestly. "No," I said finally. "Because that pain led us here, to this foundation, to each other, to becoming people we couldn't have been without going through fire first. You're a better person than I am," he said. "I still regret hurting you." "Then let that regret keep you honest," I said, turning in his arms to face him. "Let it remind you every day to be kind, to see people, to remember that everyone you meet is fighting battles you can't see." He kissed my forehead gently. "I will," he promised. Every single day, we stood there on the rooftop, two people who'd saved each other in different ways, who'd learned that love isn't about deserving or earning. It's about choosing every day to see the best in someone and help them become it. The city lights sparkled below us, and somewhere in those streets, healthcare workers were getting support from our foundation. People were being saved because I'd chosen to save one difficult man. Because sacrifice, when it transforms into action, becomes something bigger than itself. That's what our story was. Not a romance about a nurse and a billionaire, but a testimony to the truth that broken people can heal each other if they be brave enough to try. That cruelty can become kindness if someone refuses to match it. That the people we save might be the ones who save us right back. The end. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the smallest acts of grace. Lily gave her blood when no one was watching. Alexander learned humility when he had everything to lose. Together, they discovered that true strength is knowing when to give and when to protect yourself. That sacrifice without boundaries destroys, but sacrifice with wisdom transforms everything. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it reached your heart, even just a little, do not leave without letting me know. A simple heart in the comments is enough. And if you want to feel more stories like this, stories about love that survives impossible odds, about sacrifice that transforms into something beautiful, about becoming the person someone's courage believed you could be, make sure to subscribe to Dramora Stories. I personally curate and bring these journeys to life for you. Every story here is a reminder that the people we save often save us right back. And maybe that is true for you too.